1.1 Violence against women. Pornography emerged in Europe as a distinct cultural genre, with the development of mass print culture in the 19th century. Historians of Europe tell us that pornography works appeared and flourished at the time when modern democratic states and industrialist capitalist economies were being formed. Pornographic literature and engravings are often vehicles for promoting new political and scientific ideas. Today, sexually graphic publications occasionally have a political aim, but the majority of such materials are marketed for sexual titillation, entertainment, and instruction. Religious and secular moralists have frequently condemned pornography for its harmful impact on sexual mores, children, and public order and decency. As a result, pornography has been regulated in a variety of ways. In the US, pornographic materials can violate obscenity statutes if they appeal to prurient interests, are offensive to the average person, and lack serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value. Pornography became a focus of feminist activism as second-wave feminists began to challenge various forms of culturally entrenched violence against women, especially rape and domestic violence. Many feminists allege that pornographic films and magazines eroticize the sexual assault, torture, and exploitation of women. Feminists have debated whether pornography is merely a reflection of a sexist culture or a significant causal factor in a pervasive sexual violence against women. In the 1980s, feminist philosophers and legal theorists argued that pornographic works could precipitate sexual assaults against women because they endorse or recommend the violation and degradation of women. Helen Longino claims that pornography shows men and women taking pleasure in activities that objectify women and treat women as less than human. By depicting female subjects as dehumanized objects, pornography encourages the idea that women can be treated without moral regard, i.e. raped and tortured. Longino writes, "What's wrong with pornography, then, is its degrading and dehumanizing portrayal of women, and not its sexual content. Pornography, by its very nature, requires that women be subordinate to men and mere instruments for the fulfillment of male fantasies." Some years later, Catherine MacKinnon and Andrea Dworkin defined pornography in their model ordinance as the graphic, sexual, explicit subordination of women. The ordinance captured the developing feminist view that pornography is a form of defamatory speech against women and can precipitate invidious forms of discrimination against women. MacKinnon writes, "Women who charge men with sexual abuse are not believed. The pornographic view of them is, they want it, they all want it." In other words, by undermining women's ability to seek justice for sexual assaults and harassment, the production and dissemination of pornography promotes gender-based discrimination and oppression. Moreover, MacKinnon argues that specific pornography does directly cause some assaults. Some rapes are performed by men with paperback books in their pockets. MacKinnon claims both that pornography is used by men to train women to sexual submission, and that pornography conditions male orgasm to female subordination. In other words, pornography shapes both female and male sexual desire into victim abuser roles that are then treated as natural forms of sexual and gender expression. Furthermore, pornography promotes rights violations, not only of the female partners, friends, acquaintances, and relatives of the men who consume pornography, but also of the women who participate in its production. According to MacKinnon, this is because the acts caught on film in much pornography are allegedly coerced through intimidation and money. In MacKinnon's words, pornography represents sex forced on real women so that it can be sold at a profit to be forced on other real women. Women's bodies trussed and maimed and raped and made into things to be hurt and obtained and accessed. And this presented as the nature of women, the coercion that is visible and the coercion that has become invisible. This and more bothers feminists about pornography. Pornography causes attitudes and behaviors of violence and discrimination that define the subject, the treatment and status of half of the population. In short, a number of feminists conclude that pornography is not simply a reflection of sexism and male domination, but that it nourishes sexism by being a key component of the mechanism for producing and maintaining male domination. Longino, MacKinnon, and others argue that pornography should not be given the same legal protection as other expressive materials, and recommend that pornography be strictly regulated. However, they advocate the legal regulation of pornography not as a form of obscene expression, but as a practice that causes injuries to women, individually and as a group. Longino argues that liberal toleration for pornography constitutes toleration for civil and sexual harms against women. McKinnon and Dworkin emphasize that because women possess vastly unequal social power compared to men, women's participation in the production of pornography should not be considered fully consensual. Pornography, on their view, involves the coercive exploitation, public humiliation of vulnerable and disempowered citizens, and it encourages further abuse. For McKinnon and Dworkin, pornography serves as a critical weapon in maintaining women's second-class social status, for it perpetuates a climate in which women are both defined as sexual objects and constantly threatened with violence, making it impossible for them to exercise whatever formal rights they have won. McKinnon and Dworkin's model ordinance proposes to make pornography actionable as a civil rights violation, so that women could seek legal redress when pornographic materials interfered with the exercise of their rights or caused personal harms. They argue that by protecting the speech of pornographers and shielding them from liability, the state fails to protect women's equality and freedom. McKinnon writes, the First Amendment essentially presumes some level of social equality among people. The First Amendment also presumes that for the mind to be free to fulfill itself, speech must be free and open. Andrew's work shows that pornography contributes to enslaving women's minds and bodies as a social process and as a form of speech. Pornography amounts to terrorism and promotes not freedom but silence. Rather, it promotes freedom for men and enslavement and silence for women. In sum, a number of feminist theorists maintain that the legal and social suppression of pornography is necessary to achieve gender equality and to resist the oppression of women. Not all feminist theorists concur with the feminist critique of pornography. While agreeing that the content of pornography condones the objectionable treatment of women, Anne Jarry was one of the first to question whether pornography should be held responsible for pervasive gender-based violence and discrimination. Jarry writes, much of the research on the effects of pornography indicates that any effect it has, positive or negative, is short-lived. Jarry also questions whether treating a woman as a sex object is always bad, and suggests that pornography succeeds in harming women in part because viewers assume that sex is generally harmful to women. Jarry encourages feminists to support the production of non-sexist pornography rather than try to suppress pornographic materials. Many of the themes of Jarry's early essay have persisted in the ongoing feminist pornography debate: the causal properties of pornographic works, the moral significance of sexual objectification, and the legal suppression of pornography.